All right, and welcome back to the Rebuild Health and Fitness Podcast. Today, special guests. So we have two globally recognized fitness personalities, and we're lucky enough to know Morgan for a while, which is, if we're honest, has led to us to pull strings to get Steve Cook on the podcast, which he found about on Thursday.
Morgan's just mentioned passing. Oh yeah, we're doing a podcast later on this week. I was like, what day? Friday? We're golfing that day, babe. So
yeah,
Saturday it is. We're here.
And you fly back to America on
Tuesday.
Yep. So in researching for this podcast to shape what you do, there's for both of you, there's hundreds of different answers. It's amazing what you can find about you. I know what you I know what you had for breakfast this morning, Steve. All right. So obviously you've done a lot in your careers, achievements, businesses. So right now, who would you say Steve Cook and Morgan Moroney are?
Oh, that's a tough question. You can go first, babe.
Right now I am a 26-year-old woman who is in a long distance relationship, fighting the government for a visa. I'm kind of stepping into more of a, I think, professional role in my businesses and stuff, which is really nice. Expanding on business ideas and concepts that I've wanted to do for a while, and finally getting to a point where I feel like all of, everything that I've done leading up to this point is coming to fruition, which is exciting. So I'm a very excited gal, 26-year-old gal.
2023, big year.
2023 is going to be a huge year. I'm excited.
Yeah, and I think, just to echo that, I think I'm probably where I'm at right now. I feel I'm beat up after COVID, after like what we've been through. I feel like I'm ready for kind of a routine in life. I'm ready to get back to kind of creating content in YouTube. I feel like I've been almost, I'll use the word burnt out. I felt like, when COVID kind of hit, and we stayed at home, there's lockdowns and this and that. It kind of was the first time in 10 years I stopped doing expos, stopped doing events, stopped doing the things that really allowed me to grow a brand and platform. I think that I loved meeting people, and then being kind of resorted to just just your iPhone, social media and things like that. I think that was kind of a tough period with just what we do, because I'm such a people person, and I think that was difficult. So I think for me right now, I'm kind of looking forward to getting our lives, wherever that may be, Australia or the US, our business with Apollo and Sage, my fitness app, Fitness Culture. Morgan's going to be releasing a fitness app, and getting back to some semblance of normal, whether that's here or the US to be seen, but getting back to, training, making videos, doing what I love to do, seeing people at pop-ups, doing events, and just kind of, spreading the good word, getting back into fitness and continuing golfing. Because
there has to be a continual evolution, which we'll talk about all this, especially identity and change over periods of time. But I have had some questions from a few people from the gym.
Oh, okay.
One of them, we'll get this out of the way early, Morgan, before it goes into it, and make sure the podcast isn't around this. But
you're good.
The one guy, he's looking, he's like, fuck yeah, golf. So he's like asking.
Morgan's like, oh gosh, I can't get away.
Because this guy, Brendan, he plays off 6 in Wynnum.
Oh, that's great.
So he's like, what's his handicap? And he's like, he's so big, what's his drive distance?
So it's funny, he's at Wynnum. So I played there. We only played 9. I played my best 9. I shot 2 over on the front, and then yesterday we played out at Brookwater, and that was one of the hardest courses. And today I feel humbled. Yesterday I wanted to hand in my golf clubs.
It was so bad. Yesterday was so bad.
Yeah, I wanted to hand in my golf clubs and just be like, I'm never touching this again. And golf's one of those things that I think it is as much physical. It is like, it's very physical. There's timing, there's rotation, there's so much stuff. But then the mental side of it is probably even bigger. Yeah. Where, I'm a guy that I love thinking, whether it's in the gym, whether it's in the kitchen, I like having my meal plan, my workouts. I like following routine, like I was saying. And I think in golf, like, I like knowing, okay, P1, P2, going through the positions where I should be at, and I can overthink things. So I think that, it's been good for me because it's been humbling. But driving distance, like if I get a hold of one, I would say like the day we played at Wynnum, I was probably
like
averaging. What's that?
350?
No, not that far. We're talking meters or yards here too, because we got
At Tambo, that big drive you did at Tambo.
No, I mean, like, again,
You can accentuate it.
280 meters since we're in
It's pretty far.
carry of that. Yeah, so like again, it's good when it's good. When it's bad, I'll be in the trees though. So it doesn't matter how far you. Like yesterday at Brookwater, we used driver maybe 4 times the entire time because it was such a narrow course. So and I lost probably 12 golf balls, guys. It was an awful day.
I've played there. Do you know the
it
ninth
is
that
so skinny.
Yes,
where it comes in and you go back in. So
Yes.
I played that about a month ago, and I was like, I'm going to ping this. No, actually, I'm going to play it soft. I was maybe like 100 yards away, play it soft, but I connected with something so well. So we went over.
Wait, you were in Wynnum or Brookwater?
Wynnum.
Yeah. Wynnum.
Smashed the shed, like the ground shed.
What, you went left?
Yeah, smashed the ground shed.
Yeah.
2 like people ran out, were just like shaking their heads like this, and I was just like, oh my god! I just picked up, just went to the tent.
You know what the funny thing is with hole 9, everyone usually shanks it right.
It's so nerve wracking when
So
there's
you go in the
people
water.
there.
Yeah, no, that is true. You're right. Like you have the clubhouse you see. On that hole, it's just there's a tree behind the green. You just concentrate on that. Just block out all the noise. Because the minute in golf, minute you're like, I can't go left.
Yeah,
you're gonna go left.
Yeah. And there's always someone having a fucking beer on the balcony.
Always somebody watching you. Yeah, always somebody.
I'm pretty sure at Wynnum on one of the holes, I've hit a ball and it's bounced on the road and disappeared somewhere after there. But it was a frightening time. I was like, oh my God,
that's the thing in golf.
I'm going to hit someone's house. I'm going to hit someone's car.
Yeah, as a beginner, you're going to take some nasty divots. You're going to tear up a course. Realize that you're going to probably, hit some structures at some point, car, house, whatever. Like everyone golfing has done that at some point. Yeah. If you live on the golf course, just know, like that's part of living on a golf course.
Yeah, I think I told you a story last time. I won't go through it, but the best advice I ever got when I was playing golf was like, you're not good enough to get pissed off. And I was like, fair.
Definitely.
And that is actually why I was getting really pissed off because I spend so much time practicing these days.
Steve has reason to get pissed off.
And so I'm like, but again, it gets down to the overthinking thing. Like the more you know, the more you can get yourself in trouble. The more you know, the more you're thinking about it. And it's just like, no, I need one swing thought. I need to simplify it. And that's where I'm at.
It's supposed to be meditative, but rarely. So both obviously built huge sort of fan bases over the years, and sort of, Steve, you were sort of before social media. I'm not saying that you're old, but before social media.
Before social media.
But before social media, you obviously had quite a successful bodybuilding career after you finished as sort of a...
Just different social media. It was like Facebook then. Like Facebook and YouTube.
MySpace.
No, baby, I'm not that old. Come on now.
Bebo?
MSN.
What is that?
You never have a Bebo? Bebo was
Surely you had MSN, Messenger.
No, well, you are a little bit older then.
No, my parents didn't let me have it.
I didn't have it either.
I used to run home from school. My mum would be on the phone. I'm like, I need the internet cable. Drag it out, plug it in, and then I was just on.
Messaging your
where you pick up chicks.
MSN was where I was
My buddy would come home from school, and he had like 4 girls he'd be talking to. And I was just like, man, life is so much different in my house. I was like, I go home, and my parents say go outside and play, and my buddy
you
was,
outside.
My buddy was just, but I guess, that's why I ended up loving the gym, because it was like
what you could do.
I had nothing else to do.
So how did you get into bodybuilding? Obviously, you finished. You were a linebacker at now Utah Tech University.
Utah Tech, good job, man. That's
it wasn't Utah Tech at the time,
Dixie
was it?
State, yeah.
Dixie State. Yeah. And then you got into bodybuilding after that. So what was it drove you to that?
I think for me, it was just a passion that I had working out for football. I would always do my strength and conditioning exercises, and then you'd find me curls, doing the beach body stuff. So it was, I think, it was the fact that even in high school, I loved being strong. I loved being somebody that, powerful, bigger, faster, stronger. There was a documentary about that growing up. Like I followed Walter Payton, who would go running hills. So it was the extra. It was like I did it because of football, like originally to be better at sports, but I found quickly that like I liked actually just being good at exercise and fitness. And funny enough, like I actually got done playing college football, and before I jumped into bodybuilding, I was doing CrossFit.
Yeah, right.
For a good time. There was Meridian, CrossFit Meridian in Idaho. Their coach was an ex bodybuilder guy, And I knew I kind of wanted to do both. CrossFit at the time, obviously, it was like the Kalipa days. Wisconsin is where they held it at back in the day.
Not great technique, that is.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
No regulation.
Yeah, it was just about like, hey, what's your motor like? And for me, from coming from football, that resonated with me. And growing up, actually, I was fortunate enough to our rival high school. They had like a math teacher that was a USA weightlifting coach. Like he was the man. He was good. So my dad would take me over there after school, and I would work on some Olympic lifting. I never got super proficient at it. I never competed at it, but I was introduced at a young age to it. So doing, the cleans, the snatch, I got my weightlifting cert in that, and liked it. Again, it was at least introduced to it, so I had that in the repertoire. So I did some CrossFit stuff while actually getting ready for a bodybuilding show. The day I won the bodybuilding show was actually like a men's physique type show. I did like 40 pull-ups in the pull-up contest, and all the other bodybuilders were like, "Dude, you're not like." They were all so emaciated, so wasted.
Are you kipping?
No. It was strict. It was all strict. Yeah. No, that was the big thing, is that the guy doing the reps it was all strict. Yeah. So, and I was the nice thing was that I'd gotten really lean. I was light for me. I wasn't heavy, but I was also still fairly strong, and I'd had crazy amount of food that morning gearing up for, so I felt good and just repped out, won $500 for the pull-ups, and I was like, hey, I like being both. So.
Yeah. It's really interesting because you were quite successful. You were in the top 10 in Mr. Olympia.
Yeah. I
honestly didn't even know that.
I'm going to tell you everything about your husband.
Thank you.
I was
This is very insightful.
The third men's physique pro. Before men's physique was even around, the Muscle and Fitness Male Model Search, it was a contest I won that kind of started men's physique, the category itself. And then once men's physique came out, I won the first pro show that qualified me for the first Olympia. So I did the first two Olympias. Did okay in them, but it was one of those things that I kind of hadn't lost the show really up until that point. So when I lost the Mr. Olympia show, I was just kind of like, why? Like, why am I putting so much time and effort into something that's so subjective it was difficult for me.
Because you always say with sort of CrossFit, when they're competing at the games, for example, or in competition, they're feeling their best, right? Where when you are looking your best in bodybuilding, you're feeling your feeling your worst, and you felt both sides of that.
Yeah, and I think I tried to pride myself on, like, when I would prep for a show, I didn't do crazy drastic things. Like, if you look at the bodybuilding community, the world, like, again, you think about there's diuretics that those guys take on stage, and when I was competing, so before I did men's physique, I did natural bodybuilding, so the NGA, and that was, you got drug tested, you peed in the cup, or you did a polygraph test.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and so it was one of those things that that was kind of cool to be a part of that and to do that, and to really, that's where you learn so much about, like, natural bodybuilders don't get enough credit because they are the ones that really learn so much about the body, peak week even. Now, Mr. Olympia, that's a whole nother conversation about, performance enhancement drugs and everything that goes on there. It's in a different category you can't compare the two. They're two totally different sports in my opinion, basically. Yeah. But they're just taking, different things. But still, I still think the leanest, driest guys I've ever seen are natural bodybuilders on stage.
Have you ever seen Generation Iron 3?
Yeah.
It was funny on that because you have a look at these men's physique because they wear board shorts.
Yeah.
And like from where I am, I'm going, these guys are in incredible shape. But then you've got all these bodybuilders going, these guys don't even lift. Yeah. Like they shouldn't even be bodybuilders.
It was so crazy because that's like I was a pro natural bodybuilder. I was a big natural bodybuilder at 205 pounds on stage. But going to Mr. Olympia, competing, it was like, oh, these men's bikini is what they kept calling it. Which was funny because, again, like these guys, it's just like, dude, you're 200 and whatever, but you're just so unhealthy.
You can't wipe your
Yeah,
ass.
and again,
literally.
You're 100%. Like, I just remember looking at Branch Warren, guy that, had one of the grainiest, gnarliest, like, if he was a natural bodybuilder, he would never have won anything because he didn't have pretty muscle bellies. It wasn't good insertions, but he just was a guy that was like, I'm going to take copious amounts of performance enhancements. I'm going to train my butt off, and I'm going to come in with a package that just looks freaky. Yeah. And that's what you get at the Mr. Olympia contest. You get freaky physiques.
And it's only getting freakier. But can you just turn that fan down a little bit? This one. So
I was just going to say, I was listening to you on Ross Edgley's podcast, probably a few years ago now, and you're speaking about like post-show, you'd almost have like these binge eating episodes.
Yeah.
Like, when did you start to realize like that was becoming a bit of a problem? Because it is
an eating disorder, really.
Yeah. Because it is quite common for bodybuilders and fighters. Like, I've heard a few fighters speak about it after they fight, they just go like on these, like Paddy Pimblett.
Yep.
A few
you
others
see
like
that guy?
Yeah.
He just blows up. He really does have that yo-yo dieting like a competitor does, and it's interesting because you see it with bodybuilders, and it's like, oh, he's bulking. But that doesn't excuse the fact that like what you're doing isn't really healthy. It's not good for your heart. It's not good for your cardiovascular system. All of that. When women do it, when you see a girl who's 105 pounds or 110, we'll say she's 50 kgs because we're in Australia. She's 50 kgs on stage. If she puts on 5 kg in a week, you're going to see it, and people are going to be like, oh my gosh. With bodybuilders, they just wear bigger hoodies, they cover up and things like that. But I definitely think it's something that, I went through that. Your body wants to really swing. You've been in this caloric deficit for so long. So I think there are some good coaches out there. Lane Norton was always one talking about reverse dieting and how that's super important to do. But then it's also, I think the biggest thing you don't see a lot of competitors have is a goal that's based in performance rather than looks. Like, you've just been focusing 16 weeks on how you look, getting into the best shape of your life to look a certain way. Afterwards, you're never going to attain what you just did on stage. So have a performance goal. And that's kind of where afterwards, I was always different than other bodybuilders. Like, I would always try to go do a Tough Mudder or a sparring race or just do a half marathon. So I probably didn't, I wasn't a good bodybuilder because I didn't take that time and bulk up and I wanted to change up my focus on something.
They reckon there's like I heard the fight dietitian talk about like a deficit bank. Like, when you go through these huge sort of deficits to create huge weight loss, like your physiology wants to get back to where it was. So 100%. You're just creating these banks, and that's what they reckon with Paddy. They reckon he doesn't actually gain that much. He gains a lot of it around his fat. But see, if he's created a deficit of 100,000 calories, his body's going to do everything to get that back as fast as it can. But again, it can't handle that in one load, right? Which is why you sort of reverse diet out.
And then not to mention, just like, again, the level of carbohydrates that's going to bring water into the cell as well, and then you're just going to look puffy. So how much of it is really fat? Like, that was always the thing. Like, I would gain sometimes 12 pounds in a week. It wasn't 12 pounds of fat. There was so much water weight, salt, sodium, that it was you're just puffy.
It'd be very little fat.
Yeah.
Very little fat. So we talk genetics, and this sort of goes both of you, sort of nature v nurture. So obviously, there has to be a genetic element to most things, especially in sort of sport, bodybuilding, sort of gymnastics, anything. There has to be, right? But then we have to obviously work hard in sort of what they do. So I read some stuff about, like, Dad used to make you do things like push-ups in your sort of commercial breaks when you were a kid. And correct me if I'm wrong, right? What could you bench when you were in grade 6?
About 225.
It's fucking
Jesus
wild.
Christ.
Yeah. No, and that was why, again, like, it was so easy for me. It was one of those things that I love lifting weights. I love being that strong kid. Like, oh, we need someone to go move that hay bale. And I was like, oh, I'll do it. Like, kind of an ego thing, but it was like, it was cool to be strong. Like, growing up watching Sylvester Stallone, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Rocky and this and that. It was like, okay, it was cool to be strong. And so I think that from an early age, I definitely liked the push-ups during commercials and things like that.
Yeah, because some people would like that, some people would.
Yes, my brothers and sisters hated that.
So obviously you could build muscle quite naturally. So obviously, let's say nature is sort of God's gift, what you sort of have, and then nurture is sort of something you have to go, but you have to sort of understand. So how important is it in both areas to have both? Because again, a lot of people will just think, I just need to work hard and I'll get there. It's like, there's an element of that, and you should never sort of put a cap on where you get to, but that nature sort of versus that nurture.
Do you want to answer this? I mean, I have a very clear-cut idea.
I mean, from the last podcast, remember I mentioned Ross Edgley's quote in his book that's training is the realize of one's genetic potential.
Yeah.
Is like the training and the commitment to that is obviously the nurture. The nature is your genetic potential. So it's like a combination of those both. They're just as important as the other. But I do think genetics is such a thing that isn't spoken about as often as it should be. Like my parents, I have great genetics because of my parents.
But great genetics for what? Yeah.
In regards to sport and movement. but, you know, the nurture has been what it specifically pertains to. Is I got into gymnastics. Neither of my parents ever did gymnastics. I wasn't built for gymnastics. I was built for movement.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it's just a combination of both, I think, and they're just as important as each other.
Yeah, I think, especially as you get more specialized.
Yeah.
We could literally look at climbing mountains and, like, you know, as you get higher and higher in elevation, there's people that their bodies, Sherpas in Nepal, like they're able to genetically, they're just different through evolution of where they live. They're going to be better at that. Jamaicans in sprinting, like as you get better and better to that peak of finding who's the best in that field, genetics are going to play a role, because everyone at some point, they're going to be working hard. You know, everyone who goes to the Olympics is going to be working hard.
And has done so for years and years and years.
Michael Phelps, another great example. He has a great swimmer's body. So it's going to be the NBA. You don't see many
small kids,
you know, 5'10" dudes in the NBA for a reason.
Yeah, well, this is that swim analogy, right? You don't I can't just start swimming and get a body like a swimmer. Right. They swim because they look like that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You might bodybuild because you have this natural thing, where you have this natural mobility, which will lead you into something else.
100%. Yeah. That's Phil Heath in bodybuilding. His muscle bellies are just so round. Like, that's for sure.
The guy's jacked. But then also, like, as you get older, I guess, and more sort of towards that peak, like your maintenance volume, I think people don't understand like how easy it is to maintain. Like, once you've actually put in that work, right? You know, you probably have to do very minimal sort of stretching to maintain flexibility. Definitely. Same as muscle mass, right? The volume that you need to lift to maintain muscle mass is quite low. Does that allow you sort of more time now, I guess, to do more things? You know,
I definitely think that maintenance it's so much easier to stay in shape than to get in shape.
Yeah.
If you've ever been out of shape and got back into shape, you realize that, like, you can do even traveling the world. It's like, if I can just maintain 30 to 45 minutes of solid work, I'm going to be in such a better spot. And it's just crazy how fast you lose it as well. But it is amazing that once you've put on the muscle, or once you are able to, even I think it's, if you're a great runner or a great gymnast, like you have that muscle memory, we'll call it that, or you have that neuromuscular, and you're able to perform a lot of what you did on minimal training.
Yeah.
It's wild. You see it all the time with, like, as people come into this gym and they're like, we find out about their backgrounds and they've played high level sport before, and like they haven't lifted in years, and then within 2-3 weeks they're shifting phenomenal amounts of weight.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck, you haven't skipped a beat, and you're like, yeah, I feel amazing. It's just like the good old days.
Yeah. It's so true. It is, and that's why I think if I could, you know, build a perfect athlete as a kid, like, you know, my dad, you know, he cared about, he'd take us to the track, we'd work out, I'd do push-ups. I think gymnastics for kids, you know, before I touched weights early on, like I was big into that, but I think getting kids to just be able to body weight stuff and flexibility and mobility. And then I think, you know, soccer, or here in Australia, I think footy, because it is a full body, you're kicking, you're catching.
AFL footy, not rugby footy.
We don't talk about AFL.
But we don't talk about rugby.
I mean, even rugby to a certain point, like
there's only certain players that kick in rugby.
Yeah, that's true. But like I will say, I would rather have a kid do AFL, only because I do think that there is a little bit.
There's more to it.
Everyone is
brainwashed. I get it.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh my god! Seriously, you can't say that rugby players do more than AFL.
No, I'm from the UK.
Yeah.
I'm from the UK.
Rugby players don't run as much as AFL players.
No, he's saying AFL.
Not as much running as
AFL
AFL
gotcha.
players.
No,
but I also
skill.
think, but to Morgan's defense, I'll say this:
you tackle, catch, handball,
dribble.
AFL don't really tackle.
Yes, they do.
Are you
serious?
I remember when I got into Australia, right?
Run head first into people.
When I got to Australia, right, there was this game called AFL, and I was like, "What's this game?" Everyone's too tall, so I'm not going to play it. And
it's one-on-one tackling.
And then I typed in AFL's greatest hits, and I was like,
"Yeah,
get away from me! I don't want these. Aren't hits.
Oh my god,
they're not hits."
I will agree with that.
I'll fight all three of you.
No, here's the thing: it is less. Just like I would say.
Yeah, because it's more skill.
Hold on a second. Let me just finish this. Let me just finish this.
Okay.
When you get more into open area tackling, you're going to have less head-to-head collision. And I'll even say this, from rugby to American football, because you have the padding, because you have the helmets, people are doing even more dangerous collisions in U.S. football.
Yeah,
now you'll get.
I don't think the hits are as big.
Yeah, and that's what we're saying.
AFL but you cannot say that you need more skill to play rugby than you need skill
It's
to
a
play
different
AFL.
skill set. It's a different skill set.
Yeah, there's multiple in AFL.
And that's what I was going to say with AFL.
You just need to be able to run and find space in rugby.
We're not talking rugby league. We're talking rugby union.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, a little bit different.
No,
okay.
rugby league can get out the door.
I was literally
that can come in the bottom of the pile. Yeah, that's
You
just
really
a bunch
don't-
of people running into each other. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
No, rugby.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
What I have trained both, and what I did think with AFL stuff was that it was very multifaceted. Where I'm sure when you get to the specifics of things, I guess in rugby, in AFL.
That's my point.
No, but what I was going to say, like in American football, you can have just a big lineman whose one job is just to do that.
Yeah, true.
I think what I'm saying is in rugby union, you still have some big guys that their main job is just to do X, Y, Z.
Ball carry, hit rucks.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I get it.
In AFL, there's the
Everyone does the same shit.
Yeah, that's why it's not that hard. Because everyone can just do the same
You
thing.
need to find like 18 players that
That
can all
to be
kick,
said,
throw.
To be honest, if I was in Australia, I'd probably do rugby
Well,
union.
I'm like 5'9", and my wife is like 5'1", so AFL is out. Gymnastics is also out. So I know
Why
Tom,
is gymnastics out?
Well,
You guys would be perfect
it's
for it.
out until a certain age.
Gotcha.
Because
Yeah,
Tom
fair
Pinchot, who won a Commonwealth gold medal for Australia, like I remember speaking to him years ago, and it does stunt your growth.
Oh,
like
yeah, for
after a
sure.
while. And I can't be affording stuff like that. I can't be affording my kids to stunt growth.
And you know, I had
Need
always
the growth.
Yeah, they need all the growth they can.
growing up, I always heard, "Oh, he's lifting early," because
Yeah.
it'll stunt your growth. And I was like, myth. But Huberman, his podcast, do you guys listen to him? Yeah, talked about what happens and why actually that can be true if you train a certain way.
Yeah.
Which blew my mind. I was like, goodness gracious, that's actually crazy. And I'd have to look at why exactly they did it, if it was a certain hormone. I don't know if you guys listened to that one, but it was actually talking about how lifting too early, doing certain exercises, maybe it was just heavy compound lifting.
I think it's heavy.
With growth plates, or even there might have been a hormone release. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's like pure strength training, like going for ones, going for like maximum repetition, but like most of the research looks away from that. You see the Australian strength coach, his daughter's like 12 and just lifting phenomenally right now. But by the time she's done, same as yourself, 6-7 years of training, when everyone's starting to train, you have so much more volume banked up. Like what's the detriment? I reckon there's so much more positive towards it.
I agree with that.
Definitely.
Just so in gymnastics though, is the stunting the growth obviously just delayed puberty because of low body fat in girls and things like that? What do you think it is?
I this is just purely speculation, but I think it can be they do so much volume, and I just don't think like their energy needs are being met. Because my
I think it was the landing.
It could be that as well,
landing.
but like my niece is sort of an elite level gymnast down in Melbourne. She's doing like they train like 4 or 5 hours a day, and she's 10 years old.
Yeah, that was you.
And they're at school. You know, they get what they get in their lunchbox, and they can just go all day,
Well,
and they only get.
We used to pack 3 lunches.
Yeah.
I used to have 3 lunch. Well, not 3 lunches, but I'd have 3 lunch boxes in my bag because I'd have the food that I ate between school and training, and then the food that I ate before school, after training, because I also did swimming.
But the majority don't.
Yeah.
We've dealt with loads of kids.
you're
they
right.
don't.
They're
and they have an up
working
and go
off minimal
before, and then
calories
they're up.
and
It
protein,
might be just enough to get them through it, not enough to thrive and grow further.
Yep.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I was so small when I was in gymnastics until I hit puberty, which wasn't until I was like 17, 18.
Yeah.
And then that was at the same time that I stopped doing gymnastics, and hitting puberty and quitting gymnastics, I then grew. But I had not grown from like 17, from like 12 to 17. I didn't grow at all. I didn't even gain fat. I didn't have boobs. I didn't have anything. Nothing happened to me to grow. And then the minute that I stopped that crazy intense training, but also hit puberty, then I grew into, I guess, what I am now, like the build that I am now. And I felt like it was put off because of puberty, and I felt like it was put off because of training.
And I think that is already what is proven definitely is that girls enter puberty earlier with higher levels of body fat.
Yes.
So if you have if you're a kid,
there's kids that are getting it at 11 years old.
because of and obviously
at 11 years
you know the estrogens that we consume and things like that. All those things that I think play a factor in it. You know, chicken we eat and the plastics. I don't know. That's probably a different podcast altogether.
Just while we're talking about sport, I was having this conversation with James the other day. Like, you've both been heavily involved in team sports for the majority of your lives. What do you think some of the lessons you've taken from that and applied it to, like, you know, your personal life, your business life? Because I think one of my biggest lessons was, and became really clear when I thought about it, was I never learnt like that losing was an option with business. It was just always like finding a way to win, because you never went into a game being like, okay, we're going to go out there and lose today. Yeah. Even if you were the underdogs, you're like, we're going to, you know,
right.
Someone's got to beat them.
Even if you did lose, you would then find a way to rectify why you lost. You wouldn't give up. You'd keep going. I think that's what we have in today's society. Kids that don't grow up playing team sports or have any adversity, the first sign of adversity that they come across,
things are going wrong.
They kind of just quit. They're like, I don't want a part of that. But with sports, you learn how to lose. Like, learning to win is great. Like, don't get me wrong. I think winning is...
You have to lose.
Yeah, but without losing, you don't learn how to eventually push through and overcome things.
In Sydney, we'll talk... Just got back from holiday, talking to my cousin. His son's 7, and they've just played their full season, first season rugby league, contact, you know, winning, losing, all that kind of stuff.
7 years old.
7 years old, coming in
full
this year.
contact rugby.
Oh, it's like not like proper tackle. They're not like really strong enough.
They're just going for it. At least it's not touch.
We're a little bit braver in rugby union.
But now they're getting rid of that till under 13s. Plus, they're not recording wins and losses till they're 13.
Oh, I don't like the wins and losses. I don't mind the full contact thing.
Yeah, the wins and losses, but like participation
people are getting,
trophies,
like 13. You know when people win and lose. It's really obvious.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
Even
the
when
wins
you're young.
and losses for sure. But the thing that I'm thinking of for that contact, the reason why I'm fine with it being till 12 is that you see these kids out there, and there's a 7-year-old, and then there's a supposedly 7-year-old that's also looks like he's 12.
They're yoked.
And
The
he's
Samoan
tackling
kid?
someone.
Here, especially because in the UK it was big, but like in Australia,
Yeah,
like
definitely.
The
you have such a
differences-
big difference in size. Again, me growing up as a gymnast, I was tiny, puny, and my girlfriends were double my height, double my width, double my weight, and they're the same age as me.
Because this guy, he plays for the Reds now in Australia, Daniela Tupou. Have you heard of him? Like the Tongan Thor.
Yeah,
He was like, when he was like 15, he was like 140 kilos and could run like a 12-second
Like what?
100.
Crazy.
Like how you get size
I
matters.
remember going out
definitely.
to Logan home on a Friday night when I was playing under 10s, and I would have been like 30 kilos.
Yeah.
And they were all
Little string bean.
massive. They were like,
they're big boys.
they were big boys. It was a bad night.
Yeah.
I'll let you know how I feel about contact sports in 10 years if I have CTS or not.
Yeah, honestly. It's,
From all
there's
from all
so
the
much
years,
stuff
and that's
coming out.
when I was a kid. Like I can remember being in 8th grade getting my first concussion.
Yeah.
Just completely. We were in practice, and I was a running back, and the other, I would say, the two best kids.
Practice?
Yeah. So we had a drill where you would goal line drill where you would just 2 guys would just run head first, and that's the thing about U.S. football is for the longest time I was told to tackle someone, put my nose in their chest.
Yeah, mental.
That is so bad. Like, put your face mask right in the guy's chest. How much neck and brain trauma are you going to experience?
Let alone the
from
guy
that?
taking it as well.
Yeah, you're not too worried because you got pads
the
and things like
padding,
that. But what would happen is if someone's coming in and I'm the ball carrier, I'm going to lower my head. So all you're getting is just head on. And that's what happened in this drill. It was head on, both of us just out. I can just remember, waking up on the ground.
Yeah.
The kid had the same thing. We were both done for practice, but we were both big kids at the time. So coach wanted to see, and it was just kind of like thinking about that now. I'm like, if that was my kid, I would not be happy.
You see that in every
kid would be
American
taken
football
out.
film, that exact drill.
Yep.
Like you see that all the
The
time.
Oklahoma drill.
In England and the UK, see it come out this morning where they're trying to get
The tackle
waist height only tackling. But then they reckon, like, they've tried it in other countries and it actually gets more concussions because tackling is about sort of, if someone moves, you have to be able to adapt to then.
And then that's where
hit.
yes.
So if you're just saying everyone has to tackle the same way, that's when you're going to have issues.
It's
with
true.
what
You start thinking about things. I do think that they've done a good job. Some places in the U.S. bringing actually rugby people in to teach proper tackling with your shoulder. I think that I'd much rather have to have shoulder surgery at the end of my playing career than CT.
Well, the one thing you're
CTS.
taught in rugby is they can't run without their legs, so
Yeah.
you'd always
Go for the legs.
go for the legs. Yeah.
Which is
seen
fine
that?
unless you're tackling Jonah Loma or somebody was just who's
where you just dive on the floor and go, missed it. I would always tackle big guys, and I remember getting told off at East about it. Like, they would run at me, and I would always let them pass me by about, like side on, and then I would go from the side. Because why am I going to put my head down in this losing battle? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to come off second.
And as a ball carrier, that's what I played in high school. I was a running back, so I was big. I was 210 pounds, and my favorite thing to do was just run over people. But the kids that actually would come up and just take out my knees, there's nothing you can do because you can't lean over far enough to, if I'm leaning over that far, I'm going down as well. So those are the types of tackles I always hated the most too, because at the end of the day, your knees are sore from just people coming and chopping you out. And nowadays you see people trying to hurdle everyone in the NFL now. If someone comes in low, it's hurdling. Yeah, it's crazy when that happens.
They're phenomenal athletes.
It's wild, like all the changes these sports are making to protect from brain injuries, and then power slaps now a thing. People stand in front of each other and just go bang, trying to knock each other out.
That's a good thing. That's a good question. Like, wait a minute, why is that gaining attention? Yeah. I have a quick question though.
Go on.
Because I always love talking about the U.S. not being good at rugby, just like
Again, I reckon they will be really
eventually
good in about 10 years.
Because I've got to be. I was saying, I always say this: the amount of athletes we have playing just football, because everyone, if you're a good athlete, if you're fast and you like hitting, it's football. But if we just took even kids that didn't love hitting and just put them straight into soccer right away, or put them into rugby. There's just so many freak athletes in the U.S. that I feel like eventually it has to come and be decent. I know sevens, they're okay.
They're really decent. Fast in sevens, though. You had that 100-meter sprinter, and you stick him on the wing, and it's like, well, you can't catch speed. There's no replacement for
kills.
Speed. Yeah.
Speed kills. And that's where it's like Tyreek Hill played for the Chiefs, now he's with the Dolphins. His 200-meter time in high school was the 6th fastest in the world that year.
It's wild.
Yeah. And of course, he's not going to go on and be an Olympic sprinter because the NFL is paying him $10 million a year. So...
I think the biggest problem with the States and rugby is they get players who didn't make it in the NFL, so they're picking them up when they're 18, 19, 20, and they're going to be up against guys who've been playing it their whole lives, but they've got a professional league over there now developing, they're getting the players early it
looks so fun. We had a lot of Australian rugby players like legends. Remember they went over and played for the Giltinis last year? They just because they were just amazing rugby players, so they just tore up. They won everything, and they were just it looked like the best time ever. So before we go a little bit deeper into sort of content, and just from what we spoke about, we've all sort of played sport, and then that sport had to end. How did you find that sort of transition out of it? Because I know for me and Sean, we struggled with it because we'd trained for rugby our whole life, and now rugby is in a whim is over, and now I'm just in the gym going, fuck, yeah, all right. What's next? Did you have the same feeling or effect, or were you?
Yeah, I definitely did. But that's when I went into AFL, so I just kind of put my time and effort into something else, a different sport.
So you went straight into AFL?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I literally quit gymnastics, and the next term I was in AFL, and I literally just did a school. Yeah. I did a school contest, a school comp. And then I got into the Brisbane team, then I got into the Queensland team, and it was just because my dad had played professionally and I grew up with the sport, and I just went straight to...
Plus you could be able to jump up very high at that
kind
age.
Of thing, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually had one of the highest jump test in Queensland of all the AFL girls, even the rucks.
Yeah.
I was so... I was the jumping shrimp.
That's what her dad called her.
Really?
Yeah, the jumping shrimp.
Because I do jump, high jump. I did all those because I just had such good basis from gymnastics.
I'm going to take a minute and brag about my wife.
Honestly, I'll listen.
I do think Morgan, pound for pound, is probably the best athlete. Again, not even... in the fact that I can take a football, we can go throw it. We can take a basketball and she'll pick it up. And I think that gymnast with body awareness, and then the fact that her dad was such a great AFL player and taught her early on how to catch, how to kick, how to run.
Coordination.
And then in track and field, you had your field day, you were the best in your school.
I was the, what do you call them? The age athletic.
Age champ.
Age champ. I was age champ every year of my high school.
Boom.
And I think it's because you're super competitive and hate losing. But then I do, again, back to that nature versus nurture. I think that you have both of those things. You have the competitive drive, but you also have a solid athletic ability in a lot of things that stems from, genetics. But it kind of pisses me off because I was voted most athletic in my high school. But then when Morgan hangs with me on stuff, like even in golf, because of her mobility,
her range. I've seen her shoulder go up.
Yeah,
it annoys. Yeah, I get that. So I'm like this, bent.
Yeah, I can't disconnect my hips from my upper body. She can do a great job of that. So there are times that I'm like,
well, body awareness is so important.
So important.
It's massive. And you know what? I've never realized how important until I got older. Yeah. And then I've realized how big of a role it plays in everything.
Just like, hey, go jump off that cliff, like into the water.
I would know how to do it. I know how to time a back salt to land into that cliff without even knowing how high it is.
So you're more the danger one. I saw you did that bungee. You weren't that keen on that bungee.
Nah, it wasn't bad once I did it.
But I drag him along and he becomes an adrenaline junkie.
Well, I was always an adrenaline junkie. Like I remember, like I would jump off bleachers when I was a kid and like bruise my heel like my dad was coaching.
I'm a safe adrenaline junkie, just so we know.
But like Morgan is like, I'm like, okay, she did that. Okay, I want to try it. And I learned the hard way. It's a belly flop. It's something. I can backflip. It's just not pretty either. So you get style points too.
Yeah, I've seen that. I saw that gymnastics video that you did a while ago. Your flexibility was quite good. Where you
what one was it?
On the the poles
in England,
and then you inverted inside out.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
There's areas I have decent mobility.
Steve's actually really mobile in his hammies.
Hamstrings, lower back, I'm fine.
Like touches the floor
easy.
easy.
Hips, not so much. Yeah. Like I really don't have.
And back, your back is not flexible.
No, I would say my back isn't flexible because I have tight quads and hamstrings. My lower back is because I can. That's hamstrings and lower back.
But it's always hard when you're comparing yourself to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always the difficult thing. Yeah, Sean needs loads of operations, so I compare my flexibility. So obviously, huge online presence. I think combined just on Instagram and YouTube, you have just under 5 mil, which I worked out is selling out the Suncourt Stadium 96 times. Is that ever comprehensible? Like how many people?
It's a lot of people.
Like have eyes on you 96 times.
I mean, when you put it that way, it's wild.
I'm just a cynic. I'm always like, how many of those are bots, or how many of those are even active anymore? So I always am like, I downplay it. I used to think
YouTube's 1.2 mil.
Yeah, that's
really
true.
Bots on that,
I used to think that like I remember being at a football game and there's like 80,000. I was like, I think it was at the time where my Instagram was 80,000. I was like, that is wild. I think early on when you can really quantify that, I can't really quantify in my head. Like, I've never been around 1 million people in one spot. So, but it is wild when you think about that, I guess. So,
and is it you? This was quite funny. So I don't want to laugh in case it is still true.
Oh, geez.
But it says you built yourself a fan base, which called themselves the Swolger Nation.
Swolger Nation.
Is this still a thing?
It is.
It's
100%.
On it, like the Swolger crew. It actually stems from my good family friends, the Oars.
Yeah.
Taylor.
Yeah.
It was like a cool high school. He's like, "What's up, Swolger?" So it kind of stemmed from that. I'm trying to think of like something you'd call your meathead buddy or gym. Like it was kind of like a rally.
Would be, yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of like a rallying cry for like meatheads that wanted to have a cool name. So yeah, the Swolgers. It was a thing.
Swolgers.
But I think people also connect Swolger Nation to what you're doing at the time. Your big man on campus programs, your bodybuilding phase, people seeing you and idolizing you.
It's marketable.
It's more. I think Swolger Nation is more about that time in his life and the time in the fitness industry than it is just the name or the
And I actually stopped kind of running with it. I had so many guys in the fitness industry that were kind of like older guys that were somewhat popular that just hated it. I think it was because it's a little cheesy. It's a little bit like, I always tell people, Instagram, when you look at the fitness industry in whole, like I would like to be someone that, I call it like the baby food. You give people applesauce. You give a baby applesauce with the peas and carrots and everything mixed in. So you have to give them the body, like you have the pictures, ripped up. But hopefully in your messaging, when people really get to know you, when they meet you, there's that real bit of information, or there's that real side where people can connect, and that's the peas and carrots and things like that. So Swolger Nation was, kind of the applesauce cheesy, like.
But it just stand out. When I read it, I was like, really? That's like, but it's marketable, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we did.
And people like to feel a part of something.
Yeah, and
Definitely.
I think that's kind of what it was.
Nation.
It was like, so it was actually crazy when I was, I'd go to comps and expos all around the world. I'd always spot a couple Swolger shirts, and it was always kind of weird to see that. Like go to Malaysia, and there'd be Swolger shirts.
Maybe we're just jealous. No one's ever called me Swole. So that's what it is.
It's kind of a cool name.
So when did you realize that sort of pursuing like fitness was like a career in terms of like an online presence? And because obviously you a little bit of a different area.
Mine was about 10 years later.
Yeah, and like how did it change things for you? Because I can imagine you enjoy it, you're bodybuilding, you start creating content, you do gymnastics, start creating content, and then it starts to this ripple effect, and it's like, shit, this is actually my job
feasible
now to some extent.
And it really wasn't that way 10, 12 years ago. So I can remember I won a couple, the Muslim Fitness Male Model Search, the Bodybuilding.com spokesmodel search. Neither one of those things paid me anything. It was like, hey, we'll give you free supplements. And then eventually it was like, okay, we'll send you on trips all over the world. And I remember doing a photo shoot around the same time with a photographer that had been in the industry in LA for a long time. He'd been Muscle and Fitness. He'd done all these photo shoots. And he said to me at the end, he's like, there's really not any money in the sport of bodybuilding. Like the top bodybuilders get paid, but you don't want to be a bodybuilder. And this is right at the time that social media was coming out. Instagram wasn't a thing yet. Facebook was. There was Greg Plitt, I think, had his website where you could subscribe and just get information on things. So that's what I did first and foremost. I had my stevecookhhealth.com. And it was, I'd get on there. We'd do Q&As. I'd post recipes, workouts. And then it kind of shifted to, okay, Instagram's now a thing. You are getting paid more money by companies that want to sponsor you. You are traveling more. Okay, now there's apps. Now you can start your own company. So it's about being at the right place at the right time. And I know that is, huge in any industry. Talk about the computer industry, Bill Gates, Microsoft, having a passion for something and being in this time in history where we have social media and you're able to then make a business out of it. And so I think nothing I did really, it was just having a passion for something and then being in the right place at the right time.
Still must have been there must have been a tipping point where you're like, fuck, I can go all in on this. I can pursue my passion.
Yeah.
It would have been weird to have those conversations, like, I guess, with your parents who would have been like,
what
hey,
are you
man,
doing?
You got to get a fucking job.
Yeah. I had a biology, psychology degree, and I'm working at a steakhouse. And then I moved to LA, and I'm starting to make a little bit of money from bodybuilding.com and Optimum Nutrition. But in order to truly follow my goals and competing, and I was right on the verge of having enough money to quit the restaurant. But I can still remember, like,
free steak.
I was traveling. I was competing in bodybuilding, working at Texas Roadhouse, and I do remember, I think I got probably a raise from Optimum Nutrition and bodybuilding.com, and it was like, okay, I don't have to work. I can actually go full time now. Now I'm going to start the website. Now I'm going to, and there is that like initial like, can I really do this? But I think that it's just having a passion, kind of just, again, like you said, knowing that if I fail at something, I'll just keep doing it, getting back to the sports analogy, overcome that, and then eventually something will work out.
Yeah.
You can always go back and work at a restaurant, shit.
Yeah, that's it. What's the worst that can happen?
So I read, and I'm going to quote this, I read that, obviously you've said in the past that your sort of time in the spotlight has affected sort of body image. So back in the day, you told Men's Health that you went through periods that you didn't necessarily feel perfect. Yeah. And that we spoke about before in terms of you would binge eating until you couldn't move at certain stages. So you speak about like what it's not, what it's like to not be happy, with what you are. But you also said that if you put your self-worth into just the way you look, then you'll be unhappy. So do you still find it daunting, or in the back, or was it more back in the day where you felt like you had to keep up a certain image? I don't know if that is still the case because you are viewed by so many. Because I know personally, like, I can look at myself day to day in the mirror and go, oh, you're not looking good at the moment. But I am my only scrutiny, just me. Yeah. Where you're judged upon how you look by so many people. Is that still a difficult thing to sort of comprehend or manage?
I would say it is for anyone in the fitness industry because you represent what you do. And if you aren't at your best, then it seems like your product isn't at its best. But, I mean, to each individual in certain, percentages, or it would affect different people differently. I'm not too... I mean, we've spoken about this a lot. Men in the fitness industry, and Steve will talk to it, I'm sure, but there's a different level of standard for men in the fitness industry than there is to females in the fitness industry. A female can fluctuate and go through all of these different things, and it doesn't really affect.
I'm sure the pressure is still there.
Yeah. Oh, they would have other pressures, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm not saying one's completely easier and one's not, but in regards to what you look like, I think it's more socially acceptable for women to fluctuate and for women to come and go in certain phases of their life than it is for men. Men, it seems like social media wants men to be constantly ripped, constantly jacked, constantly everything.
Well, yeah, to that point, like if you take again, when we're talking about markability, women buying products from women, girls aren't going to buy from a girl that looks extreme. Yep. Somebody who's just absolutely shredded, or super jacked.
Either way of it.
That is going to be kind of so. Women tend to find somebody who they gravitate towards that is attainable, that kind of looks like them. Yeah. Guys, it's like on the flip side, and even in that, speaking with that with women, guys are also attracted to that person. Guys typically aren't attracted to super ripped, super jacked girls. So you have both men and women who really love, I would say, a more attainable body type for women.
Yep.
Guys, on the other hand, guys will follow and buy from guys that are more jacked than and more ripped than normal, not attainable looks. It's always that. Is that attainable? I don't know if it is. Like,
it's the whole concept of natty or not. Like, is that something? Do I have to start taking stuff to look like that, or is that achievable for me?
And on the flip side, girls aren't attracted to that. But so on one side, you have both guys and girls that like a certain body type. On the other side, you have only guys that really want to be that big and that jacked. I don't think typically a lot of women find a big bodybuilder attractive or will buy products from a big bodybuilder. But so I think it is one of those things that at the end of the day, I've always maintained, like, whatever it is that you want to look like or achieve, like, you have to do it for yourself. Now, looks come and go. To your point of, like, does it ever get to you? You know, it used to be like, it was like an actor. If you told that actor their performance in that movie was bad and you're a critic, or everyone's like, oh my gosh, that was an awful movie, it would kind of like, and that was on a smaller scale. It's like, oh my gosh, you look skinny, you look this, you look that. I mean, I just posted a photo. Like, I always get, no matter what I post, I'm going to get comments on how I'm looking. Oh, you're looking super jacked. You must be on this. Oh, you're super skinny. Do you even work out? And so it's like you realize
it's within like a week.
Same photo.
And exactly. So it's one of those things that, like, I'm never going to make everyone happy. I'm not trying to. Like, now it's more about, okay, I like training XYZ like this. I also like looking within these parameters. I know I'm not going to live under 6%. If I need to get down to 6%, give me a month and I can do it typically. Maybe not right now because Australia's been really good to me. But I know I also don't want to live above 12% or 11. You know, if I can stay right around that 10 or 8%, I can then that's kind of a markability area that I can kind of live in and feel good and not feel like, oh my gosh, I'm super skinny or super chubby or super, you know, it's kind of an area where I feel comfortable and I can still be athletic.
Because with social media, right? And again, I don't know, so I can't really empathize too much just from us as being gym owners, right? And we have 250 people in the gym. We feel sometimes that we have to keep up appearances. And I wrote a post about it last week about ego sometimes, how I wouldn't necessarily compete back in the day in the open because I didn't want to be viewed as maybe not as good as what I should have. Yeah. Right? Which is purely ego.
It is. Yeah. But to these people in here, you're the best CrossFitter they know. All of a sudden, you go out into the open and you're, you know, middle of the pack with some of the best CrossFitters in the world. It is, people are like, and when I do CrossFit, you know, I did a video where I did Fran, and I did it in, I don't know, what is good, 3 minutes, I think it was.
3 minutes is pretty good.
Yeah, so I did it in just under 3 minutes. Yeah. And everyone's like, you should do the CrossFit Open. I'm like, you guys have no idea. You just have no idea. Like, people think that, you know, things translate over a lot easier, or they see me kick a rugby ball or something, like, you should go play rugby. And it's just like, no, you don't understand that, like, people specialize in all of these things. But to them, you are this amazing person who's able to do something they're not. Plus,
on the back end, right, there's always a perception. People have a perception of you, right, at all times, pretty much. Same as us. Just people have a perception, which isn't necessarily true, but a lot of the time we act into the perception that we believe that we are perceived. That's tend to be what perception is, right? When realistically, people online have no idea about you, realistically, or what you do, or where you are in that moment, or anything that's going on sort of with your health. If you don't post, then people are going to go, why aren't you posting? People like...
That's me right now, yeah.
But people feel like you've got...
people think Steve's
like you owe them something
fallen
now.
off the face of the earth.
People think that you owe something. Like, why aren't you posting?
Yeah.
Like, I'm here ready to fucking watch your YouTube and you're not
Especially with
posting
YouTube.
anything.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
What
like,
am I here to watch now?
Yeah, like, sort your shit out. It's like, or they're like, I'm not following you. It's like, it's not an airport. You don't have to say your departure.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
you can,
exactly.
You can just go. But I think YouTube...
Like, that's the most hurtful thing in the world now. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm unfollowing you.
Yeah. But... one thing, especially about Morgan, because we know you do quite well at being front-facing, but also keeping your private life fairly private and extent. Like, how hard is that to do? Because with some people online, they share everything, where others, take a step back. Or is it something that you have to do at the beginning, share so much to get a following, and then you can sort of pull back a little bit?
Yeah, I agree. Second point, I think there's a very fine line between sharing everything that you don't have anything to yourself and sharing enough that you capture the audience's attention and they have a general understanding of who you are, what you like, what you do on a day-to-day basis. And then it's the maintenance kind of thing. It's the maintenance factor of coming in. The more time I spend on social media, the more private I get, because not because of how I've had people reacting to my life or it's not the outside influence. It's more so just the fact that I got over feeling the need to share everything with everyone and always getting out my phone and always saying, "Oh, I'm here, I'm attending this." Instead, I feel, and I'm sure Steve will say the same, but instead, if I'm excited about something, if I want to share something, I'll share it. But otherwise, I don't feel the need to. It's not a need anymore; it's a want, which is nice. It's a nice position to be in on social media.
Gives you the power again.
Exactly. It gives me the power, and not so much to pick and choose who I want to be perceived as or who I want to be seen what I want to be seen doing, but more so that I can, again, live somewhat of a normal life where not everyone knows everything that's happening to me. And that's like when I was mentioning before to you guys about, what's going on in our life at the moment. It's something that, like, I wanted to keep that to myself, because if anything happens, good or bad, I can deal with that, and then I can come back, and if I want to share that, I can share it at a later date. I don't need to share it as it's happening. I don't need to involve under 5 million people about it. And we've had conversations as well about, like, when we have kids and when we expand on our family, when we buy a house, do we want to be telling people where we're living in the US or Australia? Do we want to be showing people our kids all the time? Do we want to be putting them on YouTube, Instagram, whatever? And I think as we get older, we start to get more guidelines between, like, what we do and don't feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, I feel I probably think about it less, and I probably should think about it more. But to me, it's just like,
I just think the only thing. Sorry, I'm cutting in. The only thing is that I've just seen more and more stuff on, like, TikTok and Facebook and stuff of privacy breaching and of people's houses getting knocked into, of people's kids getting saved onto online websites, like videos of little kids doing the most mundane things getting put on these weird websites. Like, that's the stuff that I'm just like, we don't even know how whack this whole, internet and stuff is. And I don't want to feed into that further.
I do think, but I also, I never like the idea of living in fear of not doing something that I want to do because I'm worried about what somebody else is going to do. Like, I think that ultimately when you have kids, that's probably a whole different thing. I might change my view on that. But, like, for me, like, I've been fortunate enough to, I feel like, to never have super bad experiences with that. And I just share what I want to. And if I don't feel like sharing, I haven't. And I think that there's influencers, we'll call them influencers. That's kind of like a dirty word to me. Like, I just don't like the word
We'll
influencer.
call them influencers.
People that, in the fitness industry, that the reason I liked expos, because you actually get a real sense of who someone is.
Yeah.
There's
You can't fake 10 hours on a stand.
There's people that I think that they've curated their brand online to come across as a certain way, and smart for them, but it's not really authentic.
Yep.
And I wonder, do they feel at odds with themselves? And I think that was probably one of the things for me during COVID. I was pretty outspoken on how ridiculous I thought lockdowns and it really was polarizing. It was really something that people that I was friends with or brands felt uneasy about, and the kind of was the first time in my social media career that I was like, do I post this or do I not? It's how I feel. Do I not post it though because of how it's going to make other people, because it is tough. That's the hard part. Is we could sit down and have a conversation now about COVID and have it be pretty,
neutral.
Yeah. We could talk about everything but when you're 180 characters on Twitter, you really can't.
Yeah.
And that's the tough thing, is you're never going to change someone's mind on social media. And it's like, okay, how do I don't necessarily want to be an activist, or I don't want to talk every day about how masks are ridiculous, the basic ones that nobody's really wearing properly and this and that. But at the same time, like, I don't want to necessarily be that person who's, planting my flag and being like, this is, but at the same time, when I see a world that I feel like is like, I feel like I'm on crazy pills, because I'm like, how is this making sense to people? And I just remember, especially with Australia, arguing with people like that, because Australia was locked down for so long and this and that, and America was viewed as this place where everyone was just dying from COVID, and it just wasn't the case. And so I think the tough thing that I saw was the media really, I felt like was
doing whatever they wanted to do.
Yeah.
Manipulating.
Pushing whatever gender they
It's like so dichotomous, right, online. It's like there's either yes or no. There's no like nuance. There's no like in between. Because I remember even during COVID, like, especially the American press, they'd be like, Australia's like a prison. And I'm like walking around going, is it? I think.
Right.
Yeah. And every Australian was doing that. Everyone was like, oh.
And it's so funny because on two fronts, I feel like I'm always defending Australia to Americans and vice versa. I feel like I'm always in the wrong with that. It's because I'm like, oh, Australia is not really like that. People are like, I'd be like, I'm thinking about moving to Australia. People are like, oh, they're like communists there.
Prison.
They're like, there's no guns. They do whatever they want during COVID. I'm like, there were areas. Melbourne was a tough area. Areas in Sydney where, like, I know I have friends there that couldn't leave the 5K. Like, things like that blow my mind, because I'm like, but I can remember people that I really respected and really liked, and just being like, how are you thinking like that? I know they were probably thinking the same thing about me. It was actually over the event where the guy, I think, punched a horse in Sydney. You guys remember that? Really didn't
actually punch
really
the
didn't
horse.
punch the horse, but again, if you could sit down and talk about it, it's like, okay, like, why are they there? But I just remember it was very polarizing, and it was like, you either, and that's the world we're living in right now. And it does make social media kind of like, I think I've taken a step back with all that's happened, and I've shared less because I'm like, maybe what I believe isn't what everyone else believes, and I don't want to sit here and either argue or make someone try to change their mind.
Yeah, it's difficult. And with social media, obviously, I think we're being a little bit negative on it, a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Like, from your job being sort of content creation or social media or what is like a part of your job, obviously you have other businesses and that, but obviously there's so many positives that have come from it. Do you know what I mean? Like working for things like Gymshark, traveling the world, meeting each other. Did you meet in an event in Sydney?
Yeah, we did.
Which you possibly wouldn't have done if you didn't necessarily.
I definitely would have done it.
Start these lives, and you've also got really successful brands, which we'll touch on in the sort of the next section. Biggest Loser, I want to talk about a little bit, because to me back in the day, like, I loved it.
It was
like,
huge.
Me too.
It was
Growing
so
up,
big.
I used to love watching Biggest Loser.
Yeah,
and I never watched it, so that's funny.
No,
I didn't.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't know. I was always
it was
into
fun.
it, so I was always like, "This is cool."
Yeah.
What was that like to sort of get that invite on, or did you not feel it because you necessarily weren't a fan of it?
I was
it was big in America though too.
It was. Everyone knew of it. I had never watched the season. I'd seen an episode here or there. I was kind of the school of thought, though, it was just a place where these trainers were yelling at overweight people, and it was pretty nasty. That was my kind of view. I was like, I knew Jillian Michaels, and I knew, again, like, that TV was, you wanted to be this heightened version of yourself. It was at the same time that reality TV was big. So these polarizing figures, like, the more extreme you could be, the better. I didn't know how she was in real life. I just know that TV portrayed her. So I was kind of hesitant. I did like I went out to California like 4 different times and auditioned and did this and that. And the whole time I was like, do I really want to do this? Do I not? Like, the TV aspect kind of turned me off of it. I like the idea of actually training people hands-on again and working with people. And it was something different. Like, I was done competing. I was kind of like, okay, this could be something that's new, that's fun. That being said, TV's tough. We had 150 people on set every single day.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, it's a slow moving, like, you show up, there's hair and makeup. I can't see my contestants because they don't want things happening off of camera.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay.
Everyone needs to be ready to capture everything.
Right. And so I was like, okay, there was supposed to be ghost trainers too. Like, I could tell my assistant trainer I can't see them because they want to get it on film. Go make sure they're doing this, this, and this. They're getting their steps in, or they're. But if you tell me that I can't see them, I only get them for 4 hours of the day.
Yeah.
How are we really supposed to be making sure that they're getting the education they need? Yeah. They did a good job with the fact that. So that was my biggest issue. There wasn't. I wanted better care for the contestants there. Because they were in their houses, they were pretty much locked down. They could take walks and things like that. They had no phone. They could watch TV. They couldn't. I don't know if they could watch the news.
They had like games, books.
Yeah, but it would have been horrendous for them. And I'm like, if I could go spend time with them, but again, it's like they wanted our first meeting. They wanted big things all to happen on camera, which is again for TV. I get the point, but when you're actually worrying about people's health and safety, you want to have more of a hands-on approach. That being said, they did a really good job with every week there was blood work with a doctor.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the actual medical component of
it. The show was really different in that like they didn't want, it's tough because you're always at this juxtaposition of the show's about weight loss, but you want to do it healthy. Well, you're always going to blur those lines. I will say that the contestants on that show, do I think that they were better for going? That's always kind of how I come back to it. Were they better for going on The Biggest Loser? And I say yes, because at the end of the day, they learned what they needed to learn from. They had every week, a lot of them would go to a psychologist, deal with why a lot of the traumatic things in their life, and then also how to eat properly, how to cook. What is training like? A lot of them had so many misconceptions about training and eating that it was like we need a whole paradigm shift on this.
It's crazy how they don't show that because that is the coaching aspect to it, right?
And I kind of maintain to this day, like you give me like a 3 or 4 person team and let me do a YouTube series on it, and we would get a cooler show. Not to say it wasn't cool, but
ask about the weigh-ins.
Yep,
because they've got to be bullshit, right? Because. Well, in aspect of like, hey, this guy's lost 14 kilos this week, and then he weighs in the next time, he's gained a pound. It's like, oh, that surely, are they weighing in weekly, or are they weighing in like one day is like weighing in, and then like they're weighing in like the day later, or 2 days later?
No, it wouldn't be, so on my season, I can't speak to the other seasons, they would always be between 6 and 8 days apart.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was a week.
Yeah, right, okay.
I don't know, again, like was it always in the morning time? I never actually saw them weigh in.
Yeah, right.
I never saw them get down in their underwear, step on a scale. The show was in charge of that.
Yeah.
And then we would see the number pop up. But they didn't want us to know because they wanted our reaction when we see that number on the screen.
Yeah.
So, again, I don't know. And they always made sure that everyone had to be a certain level of hydrated. Like they didn't want people to dehydrate for weigh-ins and things like that. Is there a certain amount of gaming that went on? I would say not as much in other seasons, but I'm sure people tried. They had to eat too. Like the nutritionist that was there, they made sure that they had a meal plan that they were following. And if they didn't eat, there was people watching that would be like, "Hey,
haven't eaten this meal today."
Yeah, they're starving themselves, type of a thing. So that was why we probably didn't see crazy overall compared to some other seasons. But
some of them are.
Yeah, but like Jim, the guy who won every single week. He was
killing it.
He was dedicated though. He was going hard at training.
And he was an athlete.
Yeah.
He was an athlete that over having kids and, 45 plus years of in his life, he'd gained a lot of weight. So he knew what it took to push him. Those were the types of people that I found it easiest to lose weight. People that have been fit before. It's the people that have been overweight their entire life that don't know how to really push themselves that I found they just couldn't mentally go there.
Interesting. I've always wanted to ask that. That was
cool. But I do think so. The one that stands out to me is Dolores when she gained a pound
on her peak week.
On her week, and there was talks about like
week.
menstruating. Yeah, there was talks about, and for girls, obviously that's going to play more of a role than guys. But she also that week went really hard too, like. So I wonder how much cortisol, like how much could she be retaining more water? So again, it's really hard to, at the end of the day, to be like, okay, you're going home, but you worked your butt off. That was the hardest week for me. That and when Rob went home. Week 1, I had a guy that went home that actually had great weight loss, but because he was so heavy to start out with.
His percentage was low.
His percentage. And so And so it was interesting.
Who actually ended up losing a lot of weight off the show.
Yeah, no,
that's good. Which is the goal, right?
Yeah.
You continue to what you do.
And that's the thing.
And a lot of them have.
Yeah.
But it's no different real life versus that show. 50% of people gain the weight back on any diet, and you're going to get the same. It's just you can give them all the tools. They have access to gyms, personal trainers for a year, making sure they have even support groups and things like that. But the stats just tell us 50% of people on average will gain the weight back.
I think of a lot of Australian ones. They actually became coaches and things like that.
I think that's the best way.
Because they get, obviously they've got a name already. Yeah. They've done it and they've been through it.
And the people that are usually passionate about it are the ones that are going to succeed, and they're going to be the ones to share it with people.
Well, they find their passion in that moment, right? And then it's like, well, fucking go for it.
And it's the same even, a lot of times with like people who are addicts, people that have some drug addiction, they go on to be counselors, and they always kind of surround themselves. Every day it's a reminder of what your life could be like if you go back to that.
Yeah. It's empathy,
that's a very powerful thing.
They can have that empathy. Yes. So from our standpoint, you can understand the science behind it and coaching, but you can never truly understand it. I always talk about the menstrual cycle in this aspect, right? I know everything about menstrual cycle. Yeah. I can never go, I know what you're feeling. Don't worry, I've got you.
Well, it's like a coach. I think the best coaches are the ones that have either done it or done something like it before and have the education behind them. It's a combination of both. You can't just have an educated coach and you can't just have an experienced coach. Nah. It has to be a combination of both.
Yeah, an evidence-based coach makes it, they understand literature to some extent and they've got mass experience. So it's clear to say that you both sort of value health and fitness, and it's played a sort of huge role in your lives, and it's probably why you're sort of so connected now. So what would you say are some of the other values that help you both thrive personally and then professionally? And then we'll get into sort of the professional side of things. Because obviously you have now Apollo and Sage as a business. And I know if me and my wife were to go into business, I'm like, I don't know if it would work very well. You know what I mean? There's a lot of opposites as well.
Yeah, I'll definitely say this. Morgan is definitely more of the Apollo and Sage. Like, I do the guys. We have 3, like right now we have 3 new prints coming out. Like my scope with Apollo and Sage, Morgan does a lot more of the day-to-day running of the business. I'll design the shorts and okay things, but Morgan's scheduling photo shoots and things like that. And that's because at the end of the day, I don't want a power struggle for things. Like, I think very early on, we both are, I would say, Morgan's probably more type A, but I think that I would rather just be like, hey, this is we kind of created it because she had such a passion for swimsuits. I love my men's board shorts, obviously, with men's physique and things like that. But I want to grow and expand it on the guy side, and I think Morgan, she's much more passionate about, and most of our products, when we just look at the number of SKUs, are women. Yeah. So.
Well, more in terms of like
we do clash. Like it's not a relationship or a business partnership that doesn't clash. We definitely clash, but and even like speaking on that, our age gap, like we clash quite a lot because of different things, but it's the communication that it doesn't really, nothing ever overrides the communication, and that's what just makes it, we learn and we just grow from that.
I think that's speaking, like we did a pre-marriage counseling before like we got engaged and things like that, and I think it comes down to communicating. I think so many people don't communicate well, and if to me it's like, okay, if this is just something that's bothering me and I know I'm going to get over it by the end of the night, probably not worth talking about it. Yeah. If it's going to bother me tomorrow, next week, worth bringing it up. Yeah. And it's how I bring it up, because I'll be honest. I think learning from Morgan, it's how I sometimes can bring things up. I think as men who've been with girls, sometimes we communicate differently as men. But I think one thing that we both really do well is we can both get in an argument. 5 minutes later, we moved on. We're going towards. We're moving forward.
Because of that concept of like neither of us really are. Usually, we have enough concept of knowing that is this really something we're arguing about, or is it just something that's we've spent too much time together, or I'm actually thinking about something that I'm annoyed about and I'm projecting onto him, or he's projecting onto me because his golf game was bad yesterday at Brookvale, or whatever it is.
Brookwater.
I just put that in there for shits and gigs. But it's I mean, to be honest, I've never communicated this much with anyone in my life until I met Steve, and it was a big thing of his. So now I've incorporated that into my life and how I communicate, and that's what works for us. Like, that's what we've found works for us, because I usually, if I had a problem, I'd just kind of keep it. And then it brews, and it's like everyone, you know, and then all of a sudden you just lash out and you don't even know why you're lashing out. But then you're like, well, 2 weeks ago, you know, blah, blah, blah.
And that gets back to environmental and genetic too. Naturally, I think my dad, there's a genetic component, like communicating, talking. That's why eventually
he talks all the time.
I want to do a podcast. Like, I'll just open, talk about what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, if something's bothering me. And I think that...
And my dad, complete opposite. Yeah. He'd never talk about what he's thinking about, what's bothering him.
Yeah, it's true.
It's what we grew up with, you know, and seeing our parents communicate and seeing how they deal with things, and then projecting that into our own relationship and thinking that's how it's done.
And there has to be an element of challenge, right, between each other, because that's where the majority of growth is, right? Most of your sort of tipping points where you're like, fuck, they're like your biggest stress points, and then over the other side of that,
it's good.
I think one of the biggest thing, me and James are pretty much married because we spend more time together than we do with our wives. But I
business partners are just as entwined as.
One of the best things we did, and I didn't realize it was going to be so hard, was working at our sort of values as a business. We ended up settling on integrity, progress, and happiness, and working out like what it means to us and what it doesn't mean. And we've used it to guide like all our decisions within the gym. And it was such a like game changer for us, even the way we sort of communicate to each other and make decisions. We sit down, it's like, is it affecting this? Are we aligning with our values? But it was such a powerful thing for us.
It took it took us about 6 months to figure them out.
I love that. And I think that's probably something that I need to do a better job of. We'll call them boundaries. Like, you know, where like, you know, like what are we willing and not willing to, and not just, I'm saying in business too. I think it's one of those things that that's not an area that I would say I'm super strong at, is sitting down and formulating like on paper where we want to go destination. I love the content. I love doing, and I think that's probably what's been most hard about the last 2 years with COVID and her not getting into the US and vice versa, is like we've had no kind of routine in life where we can be like, hey, in 6 months, where do we want to be? 6 months? I don't. We're going to be in Australia. We're going to be in the US.
You asked us that at the start of 2020. We would have said the US.
Yeah.
We saw you just before you left.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally the week before you left.
Yeah,
but
and that purpose. So like having that purpose, you can always come back to that defining those things that define you, and that's going. You have that purpose, and I think that's what I've learned. What I've kind of taken from all of this is, if you don't have a purpose in your life, it just feels like you're kind of treading water and just barely keeping your head. If you can, man search for meaning. Like when you have a purpose, that's a massive thing. You can almost endure anything. And I think that's why we've been able to endure with 3 years of her being gone out of the US and COVID, is because like our purpose, we know we want to be together.
Yeah. And again, even with business, like, the overall goal is to, well, for the majority of us with all our business, is to help as many people as possible, right? And the overall arching thing, right? And obviously that, with your growth, that gives you the ability to help more people. You said you used to do in-person PT. We've sort of felt with it because we used to coach every time, and then it was like every time we stopped coaching, people would go, you can't do this.
Yeah.
But then now we're not coaching anymore. Like, we can help so many more people, like so many more people, and that'll just keep
on
compounding.
a bigger scale.
Yeah, then you hire people that work for you, then they go and help their people, and it's that sort of huge compounding
and just
effect,
pushing
right?
those values, like you guys said, your 3 values of integrity, happiness,
progress.
Progress.
Yeah, and everything else has to align with that.
Yeah.
Like everything. I think you said something about there's always 2 options. I say this a lot. So when I heard it, I was like, in situations, there's 2 options. I think you said put up or shut up, which I quite like. So I might take that one. Do you know what I mean? Where obviously you're now fighting for sort of the next stage in your life so you can sort of develop. But it's been a tough few years, realistically, where you've got your businesses in America, like you got Fitness Culture, right, which is an app, which is a phenomenal app as well. So you've got your gyms, you've got your supplement companies, obviously you do all your workshops and things here, you got Apollo and Sage. Surely you can just nearly see enough the light to go like, we're nearly there. Like, and all this sort of story that's been for like this last couple of years will just be a fucking story one day to be like, holy shit, man, like we did it.
And I think that there's things that, I've been up since 3 this morning because I just woke up with things on my mind that I'm like, I need to do this, and this, and And it's those kind of things that when I wake up at that time, because I'm unable to control those things in my life right now, like I would love the fact if we were able to be, in Utah and the gym needs my attention for some things. The app definitely needs my attention. And balance is one of those tricky things that it's like sometimes it's just about giving attention to what needs your attention then, knowing that down the line by doing that you'll free up more time
to work back to that.
And that's always been the hardest, that word balance throughout my fitness career. People always are talking about like, how do you balance this and this and this, and sometimes just the answer to that is like at this point in my life, focusing on XYZ is the best I can do, and that's going to pay off huge in the long run. And I think that this has been the first time for me in 10 years that it's been more of a personal thing. I'm focusing on my personal relationship with who I want to be with. And then I can envision in 6 months, hopefully, knock on wood, we're at a very different place where we have set up a base where we're able to function properly. Because right now we're just crisis management, basically. And that just beats you up and wears you out. And I can honestly say, but again, I reassure myself saying it's not going to be like that forever.
Yeah. But then at the other, you've got everyone, we spoke about on the last podcast, Morgan, where you've got everyone like, but you're so lucky because you get to just travel everywhere and like you get to get everything. It's like, I don't fucking want that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want that. I want what you've got.
I think I've definitely spent more.
Steve hates traveling.
Right now. Well, it's because I've spent nearly 60-70% of the last 3 years living out of a suitcase.
Yeah.
So it's like if you were
I'd say more 70-80.
Yeah.
In the past year, he's been home for like 2 months.
I sold my house that I really loved in St. George because I thought we were going to be able to buy and build something. That was 3 years ago. And again, I don't want to play this fiddle here, but again, I think me moving into 2023, it's like, okay, you've experienced some setbacks. Getting back to empathy. You can now empathize with people that are going through things, because up until this point, for the most part, like it's been smooth sailing in a lot of ways. Like inevitably we all have adversity in our life. It could be, my friends, their child had cancer. Like hopefully that's as bad as it gets, but something like, hey, you're at odds with the world right now with COVID, with two different continents. Like how do you respond to that? And I think ultimately it's like, okay, I can't change things. Well, all I can do is play on the cards I was dealt. And one of my favorite quotes is, life is 90% how you react to things, 10%. Life is 10% what happens 90% of how you react.
Yep.
And I think that's hard. It's a hard thing to live by, but there are days where I'm just like, goodness gracious, I'm so ready to be over this.
I can imagine. All right, finishing question. Right, to those listening that want to be the next Steve Cook or the next sort of Morgan, what would you say to them knowing what you know now? Because you two obviously didn't start out doing what you're doing thinking that you would be where you are. But there is a lot of people starting out now with the objective to be just there.
Yeah.
I actually think if your objective is to be, I don't think success on social media comes to people that are trying to be successful on social media. I think it falls into people's laps in a combination of them being authentic, of them being passionate about whatever it is that they're sharing. And I think anyone on social media will tell you that, because people don't just gain followers because they're so badly wanting followers. It's just not how it works. I feel like it's one of those things where it's just you got to commit to what you're passionate about. You got to commit to what you want to do for you or for your 4,000 followers, and that's what'll help you grow. That's what'll push it.
Yeah, and mine's really kind of like a 3-part thing. First, I think is just be very clear on what you want. Be very clear on not just a goal, but like your systems, like what it is that you want your day to day to look like. What are you passionate about? Getting very clear on if it's somebody that you aspire to, study what they're doing, and then realizing that you got to enjoy the journey. Whether it's a bodybuilding show and I always would say this, like sometimes the most depressing days were the day after the bodybuilding show. I'd had my first place trophy, and I had a box of 13 donuts, and I was so depressed. The show's over. I have no goal. I'm here. I feel awful in this moment. I felt better, every single day doing something leading up to it, But again, it's like, so it's not the trophy that you feel good with, it's the journey. And that's with fitness. So many people are like, I'll be happy when I lose this weight, or I'll be happy when I get this PR. And it's like, if you just don't find happiness coming to the gym, doing this, the struggle every single day, it could be in business, it could be in life, like you're going to get to wherever you're at and you're just going to want to climb a higher mountain. So it's not the destination that'll ever matter. It's just being happy with that day to day, doing whatever it is that you truly love. And then the last thing I think would be like, if whatever it is that you're passionate about, like have big scary goals that you could potentially fail, or like even I think about my business, like there was things that I was passionate about. Soldier Nation was probably one of them. I should have taken that, and I still think about this, running with that a little bit more, having fun with it, creating a clothing line with it, doing something that because I liked it and I was passionate about it, I sometimes listened to other people and didn't do it because it was cheesy or this, and maybe that's a bad example. But I gave a lot of time and energy and effort to things that other people owned and ran. Yeah. And like I should have been building something that I was truly passionate about. And I think something that is yours at the end of the day. And I think it's more, we've talked about this, that imposter syndrome. I think that I definitely still to this day, I'm kind of like, I'm not as knowledgeable as so-and-so, or I'm not this and that. And it's like, hey, stop looking at what you don't have, look at what you have, and believe in yourself that you can go create that. You're going to fall down, you're going to fail, you're going to keep failing, but eventually if you keep on doing it, you'll find success in that. It's going to suck, it's going to be hard work, it's going to be a lot of, and I think that is what I would tell my younger self is like, hey, that thing you want to do, that thing that you're kind of scared about, do it. Yeah. Do it and be bad at it for a year, but eventually you're going to get proficient enough.
Man, you got me all jacked up now.
I'm fucking hyped.
Let's work out.
Awesome. I just want to thank you again for coming on. We appreciate it. I know your time is limited before you head back, so we're super glad we pushed to get it done. And I want to thank you for making it happen. Thank you, Steve, for coming.
And Lulu for crushing it.
Yeah,
and your dog,
Lulu, you were a good girl.
And your dog for being quiet the whole time.
You want to go to the beach now?
I was ready for barks, but again, thank you very much, and all the best on your next step.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.